the German Association for Development Cooperation. She also runs an online-based initiative called Judy, From Me to You, that aims to connect women together and volunteers in several civil society organizations. She is also the executive director of a newly established NGO called Our Rights, Hukokuna. I probably mispronounced that. So Nivine, you can, that was okay. All right. Well, you can correct it when you talk, which is an organization that's based in Jerusalem, focusing on civic and political rights of Palestinians in East Jerusalem, especially women. So thank you both for being here. It is really a pleasure. And we will begin today's webinar with moderated Q&A, and I will open it up to questions from our viewers in the second half of the discussion. So please do enter your questions into the Q&A box throughout the conversation. And I will start by asking our panelists to help us understand how and why we are currently seeing an uptick in violence and clashes in Jerusalem and throughout Israel and Palestine. So I will start with a question for both of you. Leading up to this month, many people have speculated about the overlap of Ramadan, Easter, and Passover, and how that would lead to increased violence in the region. And can both of you touch on why it is that these holidays often create a more tense environment? So let's start with you, Nivine.
I was actually hoping you can start with Aviv.
Okay, so let's start with Aviv, and then we'll go to you, Nivine.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, hi, Adina, and to everyone in the audience. Thank you very much for this important webinar. So yeah, why? I think I'd like to present three major reasons, and also with my interpretation of them. I think the most common one is, well, of course, these are days of heightened religious activity. And in our conflict, we oftentimes think of the religious factions, the more religious parts of the public, both Israeli Jewish and Palestinian Muslim, as the more extreme. For example, the temple movements on the Jewish side, or if you'd like, Hamas on the Palestinian side. And then we have Ramadan, Israel and Jews, get anxious, or we have Passover, we have them both together. God knows what's going to happen. The problem with this line of thought, especially in an audience like ours, that I assume are more progressive, anti-occupation and so on, is that we throw the problem at the so-called religious extremists. If it weren't for them, things would be much better. And I think that's not only a mistake, it's this misunderstanding is part of the problem. So I want to suggest two other reasons. One is basically, we all remember what happened last year. Last year, we had a huge crisis that overlapped with Ramadan. And without going into the details, why did it happen in Ramadan last year? But approaching Ramadan this year, everyone is still very much under, it's not the impression, it's almost the trauma of the violent events of last year, anticipating they will return. But this begs the question, if you're so sure it's going to repeat itself, what did you do in the last year in order to prevent it? Okay, there's a government, there's an Israeli government, it's doing all kinds of stuff. What if it's so clear that it's going to happen again? What actions were taken in order to prevent it? And actually, the current government did do a few things different, but it didn't really treat the root of the problem. And well, the root of the problem is the occupation. Maybe we'll get to that later on. But this is like, we have to remember that whatever issue we look at, even when we look at the Temple Mount Haram Sharif, the basic problem is the occupation. It's always going to wait for the not appropriate opportunity for things to blow up. It can be Ramadan, it can not be Ramadan. The last reason I want to bring, and for me it's the most important in the dynamics of what happened in the last few weeks, is that because of occupation, because Israel is not really trying, is not really interested in looking for a way to end the occupation, Israeli policy is based on use of force, basically, mainly oppressing Palestinians, but also with all kinds of Jewish right-wing groups that always enjoy cooperation with the government, but because their ambitions are more far-reaching than the government is also trying to control them. And what happens on in Ramadan, for example, you have tens of thousands and at peak nights, hundreds of thousands Palestinians arriving in the old city. And Passover, a similar thing happens with Jews and they coincide, so it's happening together. The power balance shifts. Israel is a super strong country, and in terms of occupation, it's quite efficient. So it's able to control, to oppress millions of Palestinians, and most of the time, things, at least for the Israeli public, are peaceful. And what happens in East Jerusalem, in the old city, in Al-Aqsa mosque, with the masses, the big population, and when there is resistance, when there's grassroots resistance, when there's unrest, when there's protest, the power balance shifts. It's much more difficult for Israel to control it. And because Israeli policy is so much based on use of power, there's hardly any other means to try to make things right. Things mess up. That's basically it.
Thanks, Aviv. And Nivine, I would like to ask you to add some additional thoughts to this initial question about the current tense environment that we are seeing and the causes that have brought us to this environment. But also I was hoping if you can talk a little bit about the significance of Temple Mount Haram al-Sharif to both Jews and Muslims. And Aviv, also, we can come back to you to elaborate a little bit more on that significance.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Aviv, for that. I think you covered everything. But I would also like to, and good evening, everybody, and nice to be with you again. So thanks, Aviv, as I mentioned, I think you covered everything, but I would like to stress again that what is happening in Jerusalem on a yearly basis is not a standalone event. It's to be seen in the norm of the occupation and what's happening on a daily basis in the West Bank as well and in Gaza. So to take us a little bit back further back, what is happening on the West Bank in a sense of clashes between settlers and the Palestinians, and also what happened in Tel Aviv in terms of the terror attack as well, and also inside of Israel, all of those events also affected what is happening in Jerusalem today. And I strongly believe that whenever the Israeli government is facing a crisis, it automatically escalates matters with the Palestinians. Instead of looking inward and trying to solve their own issues, they try to kind of diverse the attention to political matters happening with the Palestinians. And thus, I believe that this also explains the excessive use of force in Jerusalem and specifically in Al-Haram al-Sharif. And also, I would also like to add one more thing, is that the Palestinians, specifically in Jerusalem, are not living a great life, generally speaking. When you are a resident and not a citizen, when there is a lack of equity in terms of distribution of resources and budgets, when there is a lack of equality between Jews and non-Jews in the city, all of this also leads to some sort of frustration and some sort of anger. The lack of public space that exists, that Palestinians don't have, like they don't have public spaces. The only places where they can go in Ramadan is actually Damascus Gate leading to Al-Haram al-Sharif and Al-Haram al-Sharif itself. Those are the only two places where you can actually practice your identity and you can practice your religion. And those are the two most places where we see excessive police force in those areas, leading up to some sort of clashes. Al-Haram al-Sharif itself is of course both significant, not only for religious purposes, but also for the Palestinian identity purpose itself. As I mentioned, I can remember that from my own childhood as well. The only place where we could actually go and play safely during the 80s and maybe 90s as well was actually in Al-Haram al-Sharif compound. We could run there, we could play there. It's a place that is where we feel safe, where we can practice our identity not only as Muslims, but also as Palestinians. So it's a kind of a significant for most of the Jerusalemites as well. At the same time, the Palestinians in Jerusalem feel that we are the protectors of Al-Aqsa, especially remembering what happened, I can't remember how many years ago, in Hebron during Ramadan, when an Israeli, can't find another word to describe him only as a terrorist, when he killed Muslims praying in the Abrahamic mosque. This created some sort of trauma for us as Palestinians in Jerusalem as well. That's why we sometimes say, okay, we don't want anybody else to come in Al-Aqsa Mosque, because it brings up that memory as well as, of course, many, let us say, advertisements or calls that we receive that the status quo of Al-Haram al-Sharif is going to change, and it's going to be under the jurisdiction of Israel. And then we hear all of these advertisements calling for sacrifices to be done on Pesach in Al-Haram al-Sharif. It creates some sort of a challenge for your own identity, both Islamic and Palestinian identity. And from an Islamic point of view, Al-Aqsa was actually the first point where Muslims were asked to pray before Mecca, actually. And then there's also the other event, Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, where we believe that the Prophet Muhammad also ascended to the heaven and then came back to Jerusalem. So it's, and also for Christians, this is not only about Muslims and Jews, but also for Christians, remembering that that Saturday is a holiday. This past Saturday was a holiday for Christians in the city, the Orthodox, and they were also prevented to reaching the church of the Holy Sepulchre. So it has nothing to do only with Muslims. It has to do, as Aviv said, with using excessive force and trying as much as possible to control the life of the Palestinians.
Thanks, Nivine. And you referenced something specifically. You spoke about, the significance of Haram al-Sharif, the Temple Mount, to Muslims and to Christians, and you referenced specifically a challenge to the status quo on the Temple Mount. And I know that this is a concept that maybe people are hearing in the news, but don't really understand. What does that actually mean? So Aviv, can you actually touch on that? What does that mean? And why is that being interpreted from the events that we've seen? And Nivine also did allude to it in terms of some of the discourse that was coming up around sacrifices prior to the Passover holiday by some Jewish extremist groups. So please, Aviv, if you can just give us a little bit of context as to what that means.
Sure. So the term itself, status quo, it's like more probably than 150 years old. It dates back to the Ottoman times, when there were disputes mainly between different Christian sects, or churches. And then the Ottoman Empire was ruling Palestine and Jerusalem, and they decreed some kind of division, like who controls what. And it was like in the order from the capital, from the Sultan. And that was called the status quo. And it had to do with the holy places in Jerusalem, a lot of churches, okay? I'll do a fast forward to 1967. Israel occupies East Jerusalem, and the Temple Mount, we said, so significant to Muslims. It's also significant to Christians, and it's, of course, a very, very holy and significant place for Jews. And the Israeli government needs to decide what to do with a place, and actually without hesitation, without argument, without dispute, decides to keep the place as it had been functioning for 1,300 years, okay, as a Muslim place of worship, administered, almost controlled by the Waqf, which is the Muslim religious body. It's actually an authority of the Jordanian government. And the Israeli government back in 1967, that was its decision. It was upheld by all Israeli governments. And the general term given was, again, status quo. This was not very much challenged. There was Jewish challenge against the situation from the beginning, from 1967, claiming that how can it be? You know, the Temple Mount, the holiest place for Jews. Of course, the Waqf can control it. If you're maybe more extreme, let's demolish the Dome of the Rock. Let's rebuild the temple. But these were very fringe, very small Jewish groups. They didn't really pose, they didn't have any political power. And in the last 15 years, they have become stronger and stronger. When I mean stronger, it's both in numbers. So numbers of Jews, and it's not Jews, it's actually political activists visiting the Temple Mount have doubled 5 times as much as they were 10 years ago. But also gained in political power, and they enjoy support from within Netanyahu's governments for like past decade, and also in this government they have supporters. So when there's conflict regarding what's happening in the Temple Mount, and the first demand of the Jewish groups is, we demand to pray in the Temple Mount. How can it be denied our right to pray in the Temple Mount? The most basic thing of the status quo is that only worship in the Temple Mount is only for Muslims. So the Temple Mount, it's also the Haram al-Sharif. It's mainly the Haram al-Sharif. It's a Muslim place of worship, and Jews, just like any other non-Muslim, have the right to visit, but we Jews do not enjoy praying rights. There are 2 problems. One, is the Israeli government really respectful of that? That's a whole big issue where Nivine explained that the Palestinian public, the Muslim public, really feels that the Israeli governments want to change the status quo in that respect. The other thing is that the Temple Mount is a very big compound. It's 140 dunams. I think it's like 45 acres, I think you see. And there are many things happening there. It's not only about who prays, who doesn't pray. It's about what buildings are there, who controls what does the Israeli police say. And the status quo was never formalized regarding all these issues. So each party, namely Palestinians, Israelis, the Israeli government, the Jordanian government, have their own interpretation of what the status quo, the details of the status quo, and there is no agreement regarding it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Aviv. So you also referenced, of course, that this could potentially be a repeat of what we saw in May of 2021. And you referenced the escalation that traveled over towards the southern border. We are now seeing, of course, that there have been rocket attacks coming from Gaza and also from Lebanon. Can you talk about, Nivine, some of that linkage and how that is perceived and why that is happening?
Oof. Okay, so I think in order to answer that, we'll need to look a little bit, and correct me, Aviv, if I'm wrong, but this is an analysis that I'm thinking of, is that everything that's happening in Jerusalem is actually guided by actually Hamas in Gaza, not the Jerusalemites themselves. Because I think simply Gaza and Hamas wants to have power in Jerusalem, and one way of doing that is by making the situation worse in Jerusalem and escalating events, because they know that the Israeli police and the Israeli government are going to retaliate with such an excessive force. And then they know that the answer is going to be, okay, so let's start, shooting rockets from Gaza. And then they're going to go into negotiations, getting actually some of the things that they want in those negotiations. So somehow I feel that this is what is happening, especially when, at least on social media, you see many comments of Palestinians addressing other Palestinians and asking them not to throw stones and not to throw rocks at the Israeli police, because this is a time for worship. This is a time when economy for the city can be empowered. So somehow it feels that the events are being led by people who have an interest in it to escalate, especially in Gaza. So that might have been the link as I see it. But Aviv, you might have more analysis than that.
If you read the Israeli analysts, I mean, in the media, they will say quite similar to Nivine, without speaking about all the people in East Jerusalem that actually wanted to have a peaceful Ramadan and are against violence, but they would very much emphasize the role of Hamas in leading the escalation and in actually wanting something much more far-reaching, which is, riots in the whole of Israel, spreading from Al-Aqsa to the whole of Israel and the West Bank and so on. There are two problems with this hypothesis. If we accept it, then Hamas would want these escalations, these conflicts to happen all the time. Why did they happen when they did? And if we say, well, it's because of Ramadan, it's amazing how quickly now everyone forgot first 2 weeks of Ramadan were quite peaceful. Mm-hmm. Okay. By the way, it's also to the credit of the Israeli government, which instructed the police to behave very, very differently from its aggressive measures a year ago. Okay. When the police was not aggressive, things were much more calm. So if Hamas, it's so easy for them to create unrest, why did it not happen in the first day of Ramadan or the first week of Ramadan? Why did it take 12 days? Also, why did it end? We're still in Ramadan. Why are the last, we were really in a very tough week last week, day after day after day, and things looked getting worse by worse by worse. Now, a few days that again are much more quieter. So why? And we have to look at the Jewish side. And I'm saying this as an Israeli activist in working in my society, seeing how for the Israeli society, it's the default to point the finger at the Palestinians. The Palestinians did this, the Palestinians did that, with no accountability to what the Israeli groups or the Israeli government is doing. And Israel in general is responsible in two aspects to what happened. One is the constant deterioration of the status quo that we spoke about, namely Jewish prayer in the Temple Mount. So despite the fact that it's a clear violation and it's a clear cause of unrest, actually, for some years now, the police is allowing Jewish groups to pray in the Temple Mount every day. It doesn't happen every once in a while. It happens every day. It doesn't happen in a, very, very public manner. It doesn't happen the way Jews would like to pray, but prayers happen. There's lots of videos there. I took videos of it happening right next to the police. No one is stopping it. There is a new Netanyahu's government, they wanted it. It was their intention. It was their plan, working together with the temple movements to achieve this situation. There is a new government now with a minister of internal security from the Labour Party, which explicitly said, I'm not going to let it happen. Just 2 days ago, Yair Lapid publicly stated, what are you talking about? Of course, Jews are not praying in the Temple Mount. This government has not done enough or hardly did anything to stop this problematic situation, which if Hamas or anyone else wants to say there's a problem in Al-Aqsa, there's a problem in Haram Sharif, we must stop the Jews from praying there, they have a case. The second thing is an extreme or part of the temple movements, which are in themselves extreme. They did this provocative act of claiming for Passover, we are going to renew the ancient custom of sacrificing a lamb on the Temple Mount. And this received a lot of attention in the Muslim public. Again, the government, on the one hand, instructed the police to stop those activists, to prevent it. On the other hand, failed to give a clear message to the Muslim public, to the Palestinian public that, hey, we're dealing with it. We're not going to let anyone do such a thing. And there was a mobilization in East Jerusalem towards the day that this sacrifice was supposed to happen, which was Friday 9 days ago, or 10 days ago. And that's when the clashes began.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can I also say something that because of these clashes and because of all the videos that we see coming from Jerusalem, the boy being chased by a policeman and his father being attacked by a policeman, dragging Christian worshippers around, I don't know, just random shooting in Al-Aqsa, or the breaking of all the historical glasses in the Al-Aqsa mosque as well. All of those makes me as a Palestinian feel alone, feel unprotected as a civilian, feel that I want somebody to protect me and to stand up for my rights, especially that we don't have any kind of representation in any official body. We don't have a representation in the municipality, we don't have a representation in the Knesset, or even in the Palestinian Authority. So somehow when you read social media and the Palestinians in Jerusalem, they say, please Hamas, save us. It kind of gives legitimacy to Hamas, and it actually increases their popularity a lot, which if I were in an Israeli government, I wouldn't want that, because it's backfiring on me. With the increasing popularity of Hamas, it means that any elections in the future, Hamas might win with a majority because of these escalations and these events that are happening in Jerusalem.
Thanks, Nivine. And I just want to clarify again something that you noted, because I think this is something that not everyone understands, right? That the Palestinians you're referring to in East Jerusalem that are residents, right, and are not citizens of Israel, right? Which means, as you noted, that they cannot vote for Israeli elections in the parliament, but they are also not citizens and in Palestine, right, in the Palestinian Authority, meaning they're not represented by the Palestinian Authority. There are no elections that have taken place specifically noted around the issue of Jerusalem and the Palestinian Authority's desire for elections to take place in Jerusalem, including those residents. And so therefore, they have a very different status than Palestinians that would be living under the Palestinian Authority. And of course, Palestinians that are citizens of Israel. So just to make sure that everyone understands that and really focus in on the point that you noted about feeling unprotected and with a lack of representation. And Aviv, you spoke about some of the steps that the Israeli government did take and some steps that they didn't take. I want to focus now on the U.S. administration. And, we as J Street are an American political advocacy organization and are looking also closely at the role and the policies that the U.S. administration is currently playing in the region. And I want to ask both of you to talk about the role that you see the U.S. currently playing to attempt to de-escalate the situation, and also if there are specific constructive policies that you think the United States should be promoting in order to mitigate tension and the situation from further escalating. Aviv, you want to start, and then we'll go back to Nivine?
Okay, thanks. So, this time things looked bad, but at least right now, the escalation has stopped relatively quickly. In Israeli terms, in Jerusalem terms, it was just over a week, and it calmed down. And American officials came here, but they didn't really have to work too hard. Unlike, for example, a crisis around the Temple Mount 9 years ago in 2015, which lasted for months. And at the time, it was Secretary Kerry who really had to come and bring together Netanyahu and King Abdullah from Jordan, and to do some negotiations there until they arrived at a way to de-escalate. So the American administration can be, if I use that example from 9 years ago, very, very significant in preventing or canceling wrong measures by both parties, certainly by the Israeli government. And at this point in time, a lot of attention needs to be drawn to the fact that Jews are praying in the Temple Mount. As I said before, it's both a violation of the status quo, it's also a violation of what the Israeli government is saying. So if the Israeli government is saying one thing and acting completely differently, we would like to see the international community and the Israeli public tell it, look, you have to get it right. But the top-down approach has limited, it cannot solve everything. And what we see very, very clearly and strongly in Jerusalem, and especially in the Temple Mount, is that the ground, the public, grassroots Protestant resistance has a lot of power of challenging the government, be it Jewish grassroots, be it Palestinian grassroots, and there is a conflict on the Temple Mount. And what is it? What is it? Are we protecting? Are we accepting that the place that Jews call Temple Mount will continue to function as a Muslim place of worship? Or are we not going to have it where we cannot accept it because Israel is a Jewish state, so how can it be? And the Israeli government needs to really make a choice. And it's very difficult for it to make it. So it's all the time speaking about security and stability. It's not saying we respect the rights of Muslims to protect the holy place for them as it has been for the last 1,300 years. We're not going to change it unilaterally by force. And this is something that needs a big debate and a lot of work inside the Israeli society and with the Israeli government. I don't think it's just going to be because of the American administration.
Thanks, Aviv.
Yeah, but I also think that the American administration did play a role in calming things down this time, because I also think the American administration doesn't want the media attention to diverge from what's happening in Ukraine and in Russia. And having another crisis in the Middle East is immediately going to take the attention away from what's happening over there. But they truly want the focus to remain on Ukraine and Russia and not in the Middle East. So I think somehow they did intervene to calm things down a little bit. I haven't been following up their role that much, but I know that Biden is actually going to visit soon, no? And now for the future, one thing that I noted is that Abu Mazen, the Palestinian president, have always asked to meet with President Joe Biden, and up until now, there is no answer and no meeting set. The Palestinians have constantly been asking to reopen the US consulate for the Palestinians because it has been downgraded to a Palestinian affairs unit. And they wanted to have the consulate status again. And up until now, this hasn't been met. And it seems, at least for me, from my perspective, I believe that the American administration can be an honest broker because they haven't been putting any pressure on either the Israeli side or the Palestinian side to go into any kind of serious negotiations. On the contrary, I have seen the American administration happy with the situation as it is on the ground, give the Palestinian Authority money and funds, and that's it. They'll be happy. Let's talk about opening the consulate with Israel as well. Don't put pressure on them. You know, maybe they will ease things a little bit regarding settlements and settlers and what's happening in Jerusalem. But I believe the American administration has been kind of so far, let's keep the situation as it is, not escalating it. But as a Palestinian, I'm truly looking for the American administration to be that honest broker that will bring both the Palestinians and the Israelis together, especially that we have a new Joe Biden is not Trump, and what's his name? Bennett, sorry. Bennett is not Bibi. So there can be new blood right now going on in there. And that's what I actually honestly want them to do, to be an honest broker.
Thanks, Nivine. I'm going to turn to some of the questions that we've received from our viewers in the chat. And one of them is just also going to take a step back to clarify relating to the status of Palestinian residents in East Jerusalem. So the question is about their choice to be Israeli citizens and many choosing not to in order to have the special Jerusalem status. Is that true? Can you clarify around the nuances of the ability to apply for citizenship as Jerusalem residents, Palestinian East Jerusalem residents?
Sure. So, so we are born as residents, even though if we are like been there for thousands of years, like my family. We do have a Jordanian passport, which is kind of a traveling document because Jordan had controlled East Jerusalem up until 1967. So we do have a Jordanian passport, a traveling document, not a citizenship, that allows us to travel. With our residency, with the Israeli residency that we have, as mentioned, we have certain rights and we can vote in the municipality, but not in the national elections. Now, do we have a choice to apply for citizenship? Yes, we do. Recently, not recently, like maybe a couple of years ago, that more and more Palestinians in the city started applying to get a citizenship. Why is that? It's not because we suddenly give up our Palestinian identity. It's because having a citizenship actually protects our presence in the city. Because with a residency, you cannot live outside of Jerusalem borders or outside of Israeli borders, because your residency is going to be provoked. You will lose your health insurance, your social welfare, everything. Your tax, as a taxpayer, you will lose all your benefits. If you live outside of Israel for some sort of consecutive years, you lose your residency. We cannot choose our spouse to be from the West Bank or from Gaza. It even controls our choices of where our spouse is from and where we live. If I chose to be with a husband who has a Palestinian identity card, he cannot live with me in Jerusalem. We'll have to find somewhere else. And that somewhere else means that I'm risking losing my residency, let alone how are we going to register our children later on. So it kind of controls every aspect of your life. Even if you want to travel, you need to apply to get a visa for every single country that you need to travel to, unlike Israeli citizenship, where you can just travel with no need for a visa for at least 90% of the countries that I know. So that is why for Palestinians, they've started applying for citizenship, realizing that a political solution is one thing that remains between political leaders, but at the same time, there's a life going on. There are human rights. There are rights that you want to protect. And one of your rights is actually the right to remain in the city, not to be evacuated from your houses, to be able to live freely where you want, to protect your identity as well, to be able even to vote sometimes at the national elections. If you have political aspirations, then yes, you can practice politics freely if you are a citizen rather than a resident. As a resident right now, I cannot practice politics and being part of a Palestinian political party and a Jerusalem resident because I might be detained. So it's all of those things that are happening now. When more and more Palestinians started applying for the citizenship, first of all, the Israeli government stopped receiving applications for a while. I'm not sure how many years, but they stopped receiving the applications. Then they reopened it again. But right now, if I want to apply and I go to the Ministry of Interior, the closest day for putting in an application is from a year from now. And I need to prepare lots and lots of documents, and it takes up sometimes to 3 or 5 years to go through the application and give me the citizenship. And as far as I know, and I'm not sure about this, Aviv, maybe you know more information, is that the citizenship that I receive is a less status than a Jew who is born with a citizenship. And correct me if I'm wrong, Aviv, on that one, but at least that's the process, and that's what's going on.
Aviv, did you want to add on to that? And then I have another question for you.
Yeah, just quickly. So as far as I know, no, if you're a citizen, then a citizen is citizen. There are laws discriminating between Jewish and Arab or Jewish and Palestinian citizens of Israel, but generally speaking, it's the same citizenship. What maybe I'll just add to what you said, Nivine, is even those who apply for citizenship and who maybe go through the 5-year process and so on, Israel at best approves 50% of the citizenship applications. So meaning that 50% are denied citizenship.
Thank you both. So I want to understand a little bit about the impact of the recent events on the Israeli government and the coalition. And of course, you know, one of the things that we have heard time and time again from the US administration also is specifically relating to the fragility of this coalition. And of course, we are seeing now that things are quite fragile with, you know, the 60 members in the coalition and 60 members in the opposition. And also Ra'am, the Islamist party in the coalition, has temporarily frozen its participation in the coalition in protest around the events of what has been happening on the Temple Mount Haram al-Sharif. So I would love, Aviv, for you to talk about how you see the current events impacting this coalition. Will there be potential for further impacts? Are you seeing this as something that is influencing the way that the Israeli government is calculating its response to the events in the region? And if so, how?
Right. So, you know, if it's common, I think, agreement that the government is very unstable, not because of the what happened in Jerusalem, but because one of the members of the prime minister's government, another one, decided to move to the opposition. Or, you know, since its establishment, there was all the time this talk that the more progressive parts or left-leaning parts of the government really need to be careful not to upset the hawkish parts, because if we upset them, then God forbids what will happen to the government. And in the last 8 months, this has amounted to very negative policies. So, okay, we got rid of Netanyahu, and maybe we can say there's no annexation. But if we're speaking in terms of the occupation, of course, the occupation is not going anywhere. It's only deepening. Violence against Palestinians, be it state violence, be it settler violence, is peaking. More settlements are being advanced and constructed. So this choice by the left, like, we must be careful. One, it comes with a huge price. Two, where we are today, it didn't prove itself. We're now, you know, maybe the government will fall in a few months. What it means that, of course, if the government falls, then the left parts in it will also have less influence. But I think we need to reconsider this strategy. Like, we have red lines and we have demands, be it regarding the status quo in the Temple Mount Haram al-Sharif, be it regarding settlements and so on. And the thing we want most, ending the occupation, everyone sees this government is not going to do. So of course we cannot compromise on all the other issues.
Thanks. And Nivine, there's also a question here about any specific material changes that we might be seeing on the ground with vis-a-vis the Palestinians because of this new leadership. You know, you spoke about specifically, you know, Bennett not being Netanyahu, and of course, Aviv also elaborated a bit more about the diversity of this coalition. Are there any things that you can point to in terms of actual changes that you've seen?
Well, to tell you the truth, no. I mean, one thing is again, merits. Personally, I'm not an expert in the Israeli politics at all, but I was hoping with the existence of merits in the coalition that at least we will see more positive changes happening towards the Palestinians. And unfortunately, the situation remains as it is. And honestly, maybe just the fact that the escalation just de-escalated, we have to be a little also careful because Laylat al-Qadr, the holiest night, is yet to come. I mean, that's basically it for me as a Jerusalemite that I've seen. On the contrary, I've seen the family unification law that can give, if we choose to have a spouse from the West Bank, a Palestinian, that this person can also have a residency like me or like the people in Jerusalem. That law was actually basically prevented or passed, saying that a person from the West Bank cannot have unification with a sense of identity with a person from Jerusalem. So even in those issues that are around that didn't happen. We also see more and more home evictions, also specifically in the area of Sheikh Jarrah with the Salhi family, and how they were kicked out from their house. In Silwan, we still see the same detention for children and for kids. So more or less for me as a resident in Jerusalem, as a Palestinian, I don't see any changes on the ground at all, unfortunately.
Thank you, Nivine. So I want to try to end on somewhat of a positive note and go back a little bit to some of the comments, Nivine, that you made about Palestinians promoting nonviolence and peaceful resistance. Of course, you are both leading experts on the conflict and peace building. Can you talk about some more of the things that you are seeing, both from Jewish Israelis, Christian, Arab, Muslim, Palestinians in the region that we might not be hearing about in either our local media coverage or our international media coverage?
Well, I can think of one example that I saw recently in Ramadan in Sheikh Jarrah, where evictions are happening. Because I was traveling, but I at least could see it, pictures of it in social media, where Israeli peace activists and Palestinians from the neighborhood shared an iftar meal together. And, it was huge. I wasn't there, but the pictures showed so many people and so many familiar faces from the Israeli side as peace activists that I personally know. And they were just all there having an iftar, which kind of like shows you what the city could look like, could be. And there's also many events that are taking place where both Palestinians and Israelis are, trying to create a different reality in the city, trying to create a shared reality that is based on equality and equity, which you don't really hear of in the news because of the challenges that at least the Palestinians would be facing. And also the Israelis as well. I mean, if you're a Palestinian and a peace activist, you will be viewed as a normalizer or a traitor. And also from Israel, I think you can also be viewed as a lefty or like, I'm not sure if a traitor is the right word or not, but think like small things are happening, small steps are taking place. You don't see it in the media all the time.
Thanks, Nivine. Aviv.
No, this question of optimism or hopeful I don't know, advances is a very complicated one, because we really need to ask ourselves, like, do we want to deceive ourselves? Maybe the right thing to do is to acknowledge how bad the situation is. We must not despair, we must not give up, but we cannot imagine that things will somehow gradually, step by step, change for the better until the occupation ends. No, Israel is the stronger power, and it has, and inside Israeli society, the pro-settler, pro-occupation part of the public is the stronger, and the choice is very, very clear. We want to keep the situation as it is and deepen the occupation with all its coercive results. Still, you know, things are being done. And the Sheikh Jarrah that Nivine mentioned is one of the very inspiring examples that there is not only Palestinian resistance, there is also Israeli solidarity with that resistance, and the two together, one, they achieve success on the ground, like evictions in Sheikh Jarrah have been prevented. Two, they create really strong bonds between Israelis and Palestinians, which are exactly what we want to see. Peace is not something just you sign in the Prime Minister's office. Peace is something that's happening between people, and Sheikh Jarrah is a lot about struggle and resistance, but what's been happening between the Israelis and Palestinians demonstrating in Sheikh Jarrah and supporting each other in Sheikh Jarrah is really, really amazing. Another very powerful example is on the outskirts of Jerusalem. If Sheikh Jarrah is right on the center, right next to the old city, on the outskirts is a small village by the name of Walajeh, threatened by land takeover, the separation barrier, and the massive threat of home demolitions. There's been very close, for years, working together Israeli people from West Jerusalem with people from the village, and recently, against all odds, received really a reversal in the government's stand on the possibility to make a proper planning for Walajeh in order to prevent the demolitions there, which shows us that if we are, one, very, very determined, two, we're not in the abstract, you know, just peace, but really on very concrete issues, housing rights, for example, right to education, right to worship, police violence. If we tackle concrete issues and we do it strategically and we do it Israelis and Palestinians together, we can achieve things that are very, very needed for the people who live here and which lay the base for political change.
Yeah, I agree. And also I wanted to highlight that leading up to Ramadan, maybe it didn't gain much momentum, but the Alliance for Middle East Peace, ALMEP, they started use a hashtag together with the 190 members under this coalition, which is hashtag co-resist the violence. So any kind of activities that come up, any kind of statements, they would be using this hashtag co-resist the violence, so that they show that there is different reality as well. Maybe we need to also kind of change our techniques a little bit. We need to advocate a little bit more, use lobbying as one technique, kind of like, because the grassroots is one way, but we also need to start breaking that glass ceiling as well.
Thank you both. And I just, on this vein, I will note, on the vein of joint Israeli and Palestinian cooperation, that there will be a very unique ceremony that takes place every year, which is the joint Israeli and Palestinian memorial ceremony on May 3rd, that is sponsored by the Parent Circle Combatants for Peace, and we at J Street are also co-sponsoring this, and it will be in person and online, a hybrid event, and we will have the link for you in the chat, and encourage people to either attend if you are in the region, or log on if you are looking for an opportunity to see Israelis and Palestinians coming together. in a unique way. I really want to thank Aviv and Nivine for being with us very late your time. It is almost 10:30 at night. And I know for those that are fasting and then breaking the fast, it's been a long day. But I want to give you both the opportunity to just, you spoke so beautifully and with such inspiring remarks, but if there's any final words that you would like to add for our viewers before we sign off, please do so.
So I'll say thank you very much for everything that you do at J Street, and for all those who are interested in the topic. It's believe in yourself, like believe that you have a role to play, even if you are like just one individual, just talking to your congressmen or women, or talking to your representatives about the situation here. This is like a message from a Palestinian to urge the Congress to actually take and put pressure on the Palestinians and the Israelis to have serious negotiations. So thank you so much for everything that you do over there.
Yeah, I think it would be best just to end with Nivine's words, but I'll add that, so much work is being done here in Jerusalem by Palestinians and Israelis that are not giving up, that are working and struggling and resisting in order to have a different reality. And it's up to us, it's our mess and it's our responsibility. But having your support is something that is meaningful, both practically and in terms of motivation and energy. And the event tonight is just one example, the possibility to explain really right. The events are still happening, and we're able to explain and to think together and to point to what needs to be done. And that's how we should continue to work. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you both so much. I will say, that one of the things that is so important to J Street is to be able to support our allies, Israelis and Palestinians alike, that are working in the region, that are working on ending the occupation and promoting human rights and security and peace for both peoples, and making sure that our representatives here in the United States see you and the work that you are doing, and see the reality on the ground and understand it more deeply. So I really thank you both for everything that you both do day in and day out, and the organizations that you represent and work with. It is, we are very grateful to you and everything that you do. So thank you so much. And thank you to all of our viewers for being here. I hope that you found this insightful and have learned some new pieces of information about the current events and also the history that has brought us to where we are today. So thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.